Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today we are going to be going through my 10 favorite series. I did a top 5 series video, I think 2 years ago or something, and I will say, number one, a lot of these series are still on it. And number two, it's a lot harder than you think to get to 10 book series. Yeah, I would say the top 7 are fairly solid right now, and the bottom 3 definitely have room to move. Before we get started, number one, I would like you to tell me what's your all-time favorite book / series, and then number two, I want to see if you can guess which of mine are going to be on it, because I feel like some of them are extremely obvious and others I think you might be surprised by. Just preface this here, this list, it's weird at some points, okay? It's a weird order and you're not going to judge me for it because my channel, my rules. Obviously, I'm only doing series here, so I couldn't include standalones or anything like that. I don't have that many standalones that I would consider favorites. I will say, like, honorable mention to Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. I gave that 5 stars. It's the only book of his I've actually given 5 stars so far, and it is currently a standalone. Also, I would like to mention Radio Silence by Alice Oseman. Again, another book that is a standalone. It is a YA contemporary. Very odd for me. So, obviously can't put it in a favorite series video because it's a standalone. And I just want to mention it as, like, it's probably my favorite standalone of all time. And yeah, it's a book that means a lot. With those out of the way, as I said, leave your guesses down below and let's get into it. Series number 10 is definitely one that I don't think a lot of people would guess. I feel like I mentioned it a lot when I started my channel, but I've read a lot since then, and I've also grown out of YA since then. Hint hint. And that is going to be the Raven Cycle series, Maggie Stiefvater. This was one where I was like comparing a lot of series. I was like, well, you know, this series and this series do what, you know, trying to figure out which ones I would consider more of a favorite than the others. And I think a lot of this series, it's kind of been tainted by the fact I didn't really like the Dreamers trilogy. So I was trying to just like clear the Dreamers trilogy out of my mind and just remember the Raven Cycle. And I really, really loved this series when I read it a couple of years ago. So we follow Blue, and she lives in a family of psychics, but she herself does not have a gift, but she kind of acts as nearly some sort of amplifier to the rest of her family. She gets involved with a group of boys called Raven Boys that go to this fancy private school, and she ends up helping them on their quest to find a dead Welsh king. And it's not a very plot-filled book. I love the characters and I love the atmosphere in here. Those are definitely what makes the series so amazing. And definitely, I read them, I think 2018 or 2019. I think it might have been 2018. I think I got them for Christmas. I read between Christmas and New Year's, I think I had read 3 of them. And I like was ready to start the last one. I absolutely flew through the series. I have reread the first one, but that was like 2019, 2020. So I would love to reread the series and kind of see if my feelings still stand. And I hope they would, but because it's so lovable. The characters, the atmosphere, it's a really lovable series. And I think when I originally finished it also, I didn't like the twist at the end. But now thinking back on it, and when I reread the first book again, I was like, oh my god, it all makes so much more sense, and I thought it was absolutely brilliant. So I really want to reread it again at some point, and I'm going to say that that is my first favorite series. Series number 9 is going to be The Monsters of Verity duology by V. Schwab. This actually was in my top 5 list when I did it 2-ish years ago, I think. So it's moved down a good few places because it's now 9 out of instead of, I think it was number 5 back then. That's This Savage Song and Our Dark Duet by V. Schwab, or, you know, This Savage Song and Our Dark Duet. I love these copies, I think they're so pretty. And then I also have the special edition of This Savage Song, which I don't have the dust jacket on, but that's the dust jacket. So yeah, I have a lot of editions of it. As I said, they did make the list last time. As time goes on and I'm growing more out of YA and I'm reading so many amazing and brilliant adult fantasies, this definitely like kind of moves down that list. But I still do love this, and I did actually reread The Savage Song last year and I still absolutely adored it. And like, it just, because it was kind of one, I feel like with a lot of YAs, I kind of look back on them and I go, I'm not sure would I enjoy that if I read it now. And so then when I like reread them and still love them, like, it's so good. It's such a good feeling, and that absolutely happened with these. I haven't reread the second one. I think I'm going to reread the second one when the matching hardback comes out later this year. I don't like the second book as much as the first one from memory, but I think I gave both of them 5 stars. I absolutely love them. And this story follows a world where monsters exist, and monsters are created by people doing monstrous acts. And August is actually one of these monsters, but he wants nothing more than to be human, and he lives with his adopted father, who runs one half of this city. And then we also follow Kate Harker, and she is the daughter of the other side's ruler, and she kind of wants nothing more than to prove herself ruthless like her father. And so the two of them end up crossing paths, and they end up kind of forming a friendship. They end up helping each other out and trying to figure out what is happening, because there's a lot of strange attacks happening that shouldn't be. So I thoroughly enjoyed this. It's a really solid YA fantasy series. I definitely don't think, because like I've read all of V.E. Schwab's books, and definitely I think it's one of her more fast-paced series. It's very quick. There's quite a bit of action, and I think that it has very lovable characters to me. But I think maybe the writing isn't like as beautiful as some of her other books, like Addie or Gallant. And I also think that maybe, and it also maybe, you know, doesn't go as deep into themes, because V.E. Schwab, she loves her bit of grey morality. Like, she definitely explores that a little bit in here, but definitely not as deep as in things like, you know, Vicious and Vengeful. But I still absolutely love the series. So series number 8 is a series that I've actually only started talking about pretty recently on my channel, because I started reading it in October, November of last year, and that is the Temeraire series. I don't know why I'm holding them upside down. The Temeraire series by Nina Minovic. So this, I only have the first 5. I'm getting almost all of them for my birthday, except one that wasn't available. So I will have every book in the series minus one when my birthday comes around. So the series has Temeraire, Throne of Jade, Black Powder War, Empire of Ivory, Victory of Eagles, the rest. So I think, I'm trying to remember off the top of my head. So we have Tongues of Serpents. I know there's Crucible of Gold, but that's number 7. Tongues of Serpent, I think, is 6. Oh wait, maybe I am right. Tongues of Serpent, Crucible of Gold, Blood of Dragons, League of Dragons. I do remember them. This series follows Captain Will. I feel like I've said this synopsis a lot of times, so you probably don't really care that much anymore, but you're gonna hear it again. So this series follows Captain Will Lawrence, who is a naval captain in the Napoleonic Wars, and except it's an alternate history where dragons exist. His ship gets into a skirmish with a French ship, and they come out on top, and so they get to take what they want. And they end up taking a dragon's egg. This starts to hatch, and they don't know much about dragons, but they do know that you're supposed to harness dragons as soon as they come out of the egg. So Captain Will Lawrence steps up to do the job, and he ends up forming a bond with this dragon, which he calls Temeraire, and they and the entire series just follows them in different parts of the world as they try and help the war effort against Napoleon. And this series is definitely a series, like, it is for me. I had so much fun. I love history. It's definitely something that has come from my dad's side of the family, because like my granddad, my dad, they love history. And I've definitely gotten that from them. I mean, a couple of months before I read this, I literally watched like a couple of videos for no reason on the Napoleonic Wars. Like, one just showed up in my recommended, and then I went down a rabbit hole. And so like, I was prepared to read these books. But so like, there's definitely, like, you know, dragons, history, lovable characters, and bonds and relationships. So like, definitely my sort of thing. And I had such a good time with this series. First I was like, oh, I'm not sure about putting this on this, because I mean, I gave this Savage Song and Dark Duet, I gave them both 5 stars. Whereas this book series, I think I gave 3, I think I gave either 2 or 3 books 5 stars. So a lot of the books in this series are 4 stars. So I was like, no, so many 4 stars. Can I consider it a favorite series? But it is. It's a series that overall, I just love the journey. I love the characters. Like books that play with history, if you like that formal setting, if you like that kind of dialogue that is very formal, and, you know, Regency era, well, would this have been? Yeah, this would have been around Regency era. And all of that. If you like that kind of stuff, I think you will enjoy this. If you like dragons that are like friendly and form a bond and are very like intelligent creatures as opposed to like animals, also could like this. And I think if you want something that is like super action packed or super plot filled, I don't think that this is the series for you. I do think, like, overall it obviously has a plot, and like you will get a very well-written battle scene at the end of each book, but it's not going to be constant battles. A lot of it is just Temeraire and Captain Lawrence together. Not a lot of the time they're not doing much, they're just traveling, so you're getting a lot of interaction between the two. So if that doesn't interest you, maybe skip this series, but I personally really loved it. Books number 7 are going to be the Witchland series by Susan Dennard. And this was another series that was actually on my top 5 when I did it 2 years ago. So again, it's moved down a little, but it is still here. And so that is Truth Witch, Wind Witch, Sight Witch, Blood Witch, and Witch Shadow. And I am a Witch Shadow defender to my core. And it's definitely not my favorite in the series. Blood Witch is absolutely my favorite. Blood Witch, I love you, Blood Witch. I do see the issues with it, but I was able to look past a lot of like the writing issues because I love the stories and the characters so much. So yeah, and I'm so excited for the final book, but also very nervous because, I mean, Susan Dennard has been very open about the fact that like she's had so many publishing issues, and I wish I could see what this series would have been like if she had like nearly all total control, because obviously you need like editors and stuff to tell you when to maybe do this, maybe do that. But like if she had been able to do Witch Shadow as 2 different books like she wanted to originally, if she had have like gotten the support that she needed for Sight Witch, I would love to see what like her original vision was, because I love the series as it is, but like as I said, you can definitely see and sense some of the issues. But so I would have loved to see what it would have been like. This is another YA series, which I am growing out of YA, but there's a couple that have still managed to keep here. So this series follows Safi and Isolde, and they are thread sisters, which means they're extremely close friends, nearly Parvati in the Shadowhunter universe, but like there's not like an actual like physical act to doing it, and it's nearly just like chosen family. And Safi is a truth witch, and she has to keep this very secret because obviously this could be an extremely important gift when used in the wrong hands for political reasons. Isolde is a thread witch, and she can see like the threads that bind everyone through life. They are trying to get back some money that Isolde lost in a card game, and she ends up catching the attention of a blood witch who instantly recognizes her for what she is, and then they kind of end up having to go on the run, and the series goes from there. And so this is like the only series that I have any tabs in. Look, this is Light Witch and Blood Witch. Just look at all the tabs. As I said, Blood Witch is my favorite book in the series. This, I definitely understand that the series is not for everyone. It is very much, it's like, it doesn't really know what it's trying to be, whether it's trying to be young adult or adult, and it is young adult in America and technically adult in the UK. And because it has a very complex world, there's a lot of different magics that are happening. There is a lot of different political maneuvering that is happening, which maybe a lot of YA audiences don't like, but also I feel like it doesn't really go as deep as a lot of adult fantasies do. And so, but I love it. And as I read it, I kind of read it during the time where I was kind of getting more into adult fantasy, but wasn't quite, you know, saying goodbye to my YA fantasies yet. So I think I read it at a really good time to read it when I was like, I was starting to get really intrigued by all of the political fantasies, but I, you know, maybe wasn't reading the most complex ones yet. So I really love the world building. I absolutely love the characters. There is one relationship in here. I love it so much. And I'm really hoping that I think some of the side characters just are so phenomenal, and they do definitely outshine the main characters at some point, but I'm so excited. I'm really hopeful that like in the final book we finally get like a lot of like the really good friendships back, as well as like the romances. I love the characters, I love the interactions, and as I said, I do personally love the world building, but I can see some flaws in it. And I think a lot of the plot is just like moving around the place, which obviously is not everyone's preference, but I don't mind a bit of walking as long as I love the characters. Blood Witch was absolutely my favorite in the series, and I remember when I read this, because would it have been 2020? I think it might have been 2020 when I read Blood Witch. And I think it would have been the Magical Readathon. And I read it. Yeah, I read this and Sight Witch for the Magical Readathon. And I remember I finished this and I immediately was like, I need to reread the entire series. Because like there was things that happened, like the relationships, and there were like some reveals, and I was obsessed. And I was like, I must reread it. I didn't, but like I held off. But like I was like, I need to reread it. And when I reread it again, oh, I had such a good time. Oh, all the yellow tabs are for chapter 50. Yeah, I literally chose a different color for chapter 50. I love that book. So the next books that I'm going to talk about, again, another one that I think a lot of people could probably guess were going to be on this list, and that is going to be The Murderbot Diaries by Martha Wells. So they are in the 6th spot, so they haven't quite breached the top 5. I did consider them, because you'll see why I was considering when we get to the next book series that's in spot number 5. I was like, I should probably put Murderbot, but I'm not going to. So the Murderbot Diaries is All Systems Red, Artificial Condition, Rogue Protocol, Exit Strategy, Network Effect, and Fugitive Telemetry. And the System Collapse is going to be coming out the end of this year. I feel like I don't really need to talk about this because I've spoken a lot about it in April because of Ramadan, and I was on the sci-fi team and I reread it. And also I read them for the first time last year, and then I reread them last year, and so they were on my favorites of last year. They were in the best books. I also mentioned them in my ranking, and I've spoken about them a lot this year as well. So I'm not going to dwell on them for too long, but the Murderbot Diary series follows a murderbot, and it has hacked its governor module, so it is now a rogue unit, and instead of going on like some sort of murder spree or running away or anything like that, it just spends its time watching soap operas and half-assing its job. Murderbot is like so sarcastic and so just like it does not give a crap about anything. And then the team that Murderbot is working with ends up getting into some trouble, and Murderbot ends up actually trying to help them. And the whole series follows Murderbot as it interacts with different people, and I just love it so much. I really love this series. Like, the whole reason why I love it so much is Murderbot. Like, Murderbot is the star. And yeah, so I'm not really going to say much more than that. I just love Murderbot. Okay. So, as I was saying, number 5, I was considering putting Murderbot in this spot, because what I am putting in number 5 is The Infernal Devices by Cassandra Clare. I know that objectively, most of these series are better, but I couldn't. And like, not gonna lie, Infernal Devices was very, I almost put it as spot number 1 because just pure nostalgia. It is, I do say a lot of the time that it is my favorite series of all time, because nostalgia. And so I almost put it as spot number 1, and then I was like, hold on. It's been a really long time since I've read it, so I can't 100% stand behind the fact that I love it as even as nostalgia anymore. So I put it as number 5. So it's still in the top 5, and it still has a place of honor as a nostalgia fave forever. Objectively, yes, most of these books are better than this. Do I care? No. And you're not going to judge me for it. So, The Infernal Devices is Clockwork Angel, Prince, and Princess, and all by Cassandra Clare. This is The Infernal Devices. It is set in Victorian England, and we follow Tessa Gray. She comes to London after her aunt has died because her brother invites her, and then she gets taken to this mysterious place, and she ends up getting rescued by some shadow hunters and gets taken to the London Institute, and they teach her all about this shadow hunter world. Obviously, you know, she gets caught up in this whole world and romances and all of that. Oh, good times. I'm supposed to read them this month, but I had 11 books on my April TBR. It is the middle of the month and I've read 2 books, so I don't think I'm going to get to everything on my TBR. And I'm kind of like, do the rereads have to go? I think the rereads kind of have to go. I don't want them to, but I think they do. Look how well loved. Like, look at the bend in the cover. Look at the absolute carnage of the spine. Like, it is crooked. The pages are absolutely battered. Like, it is well loved. And this series, I don't even know what age I was when I first read it. I think I was about 14 maybe. Also, I have signed and personalized for Rebecca. I read the first Mortal Instruments book in 2014. I can't remember. 2013 or 2014 I read them, and it took me a while before I actually got to Clockwork Angel, because I wasn't sure about reading another series, because I was like, the Mortal Instruments is the best. Why would I want to read anything else? And so I think it might have been 2015-ish. Maybe 2016? I don't think. I'm gonna guess I was either 14 or 15 when I read these. And I fell in love. I loved the characters. I mean, Tessa, she is like, let's be honest, she is not that exciting, but she is so easy to be a self-insert because, I mean, she's brunette and she loves to read. So it was so easy for me to be like, Will and Jem both love me. So like, you know, as I said, 14, 15-year-old me was eating that up. And I loved the love triangle. I adored it. I ate it up. And I reread them every year until 2020. And I reread them before the release of Chain of Gold. I liked Chain of Gold. I didn't love it. Whenever the Infernal Devices characters were on the page, was I screaming, crying, throwing up? Yes. I haven't reread them since. And the thing is, this series, because like when I started reading them when I was 14 and 15, I was younger than the characters. Now I'm older than the characters in the book, and it makes me feel old. This series, it also just means a lot to me because it's kind of how I found BookTube and Bookstagram and everything, because I had a Shadowhunter fan account, okay? I'm not going to tell you what it was. It's actually not deleted. I still have it, but it's deactivated. If I ever remember the password, I could log back in. I had like 6,000 followers on it. It was bad, guys. It was bad. But I made so many friends, and then I discovered actual Bookstagram, and then I discovered BookTube. So obviously it also means a lot to me because of that. And I love this series a lot. It means a lot to me, and it gives me an existential crisis every time I read it. In fourth place, we are going to be talking about the David Bed trilogy by S.A. Chakraborty. Also, I would like to point out, because literally every series that I'm going to talk about is written by a woman. This kind of popped in my head because yesterday, like I saw a tweet, and obviously it was meant as a way to like encourage people to like talk about their favorite female authors and, you know, all of this, but like the way it was worded really bugged me, because it was like, when I say epic fantasy, you don't think of women. And I'm like, you're making an assumption, because all of my favorite fantasy series are written by women. You can word that, hey, female authors are underappreciated in the fantasy space. What's your favorite book written by a woman? Instead of being like, when I say epic fantasy, you don't think of women. Anyway, that's just like a bit of a tangent, because I love books written by women, okay? And that includes the David Bed trilogy. Okay, the postman I interrupted, so I can't remember where I was. I think I was saying that City of Brass is set in 18th century Cairo, and we follow Nari, who works in an apothecary. She's also a bit of a con woman on the side, and one day she is performing a ritual to summon a djinn, and she accidentally does. Then he ends up taking her to the City of Brass, David Bed, and from there she gets caught up in all of the political maneuvering that is happening, and she is kind of like in the center of it all. I love this series so much. I gave the first book 4 stars, but the second and third books were all 5 stars for me. And I will say that I think the first book, it takes a little bit for you to get into, but this series has one of my favorite, it's not necessarily a trope, I don't think, setup, I guess. Yeah, it has one of my favorite setups, which is we have our like main cast of characters, slash our main character, and they are stuck in the middle because they are nearly like an outside perspective, and they realize that both sides of like this war or battle or whatever is happening is wrong. And she's like in the middle, stuck trying to figure it out. And I love that setup. It's one of my favorites because it is done so well in City of Brass, because everyone hates everyone. Like the Jinn hate the Devas hate the Jinn, the Devas also hate the half Jinn, half humans, and Nari like comes along and is like, you're all idiots. And I love that. I love Ali. I think he's my favorite character in the entire series. And he gives us a lot of like the world building, because we kind of get Nari, and we get a lot of the more complex world building from Ali, at least in the first book. In the first book, we kind of get like the basics from Nari, because she is completely new to this world, so she's only getting introduced to it, but you know, they're trying to like keep stuff from her so she doesn't know the full like extent of all of like the drama and all of this that is happening. Whereas Ollie, he knows all of the political climate, so we're getting a lot more of the complicated stuff from him. We do see that he is very much like the Jinn when it comes to like certain things, and we kind of throughout the series we see him kind of like unlearn that, and as he becomes like really good friends with Nari, the two of them kind of set out to set the world right, and I just love the two of them. They're such good characters. I think Nari is a bit of a character that we've seen before, at least in the first book, but I think the growth that she goes through during the entire series is just absolutely brilliant. I think the politics are done so brilliantly. The world, I absolutely love it all. I eat it up. And I will say I also really enjoyed the short stories that went along with the series as well. That came out last year, I think. I'm waiting for them to come out in paperback so I can buy them though. I feel like everyone can guess the top 3 because like there's books that I haven't mentioned, so they're obviously going to be in the top 3. In third place, drumroll please, it's going to be the Course of Dragons series by Jen Lyons. So I finished this in March. So the first book is The Rune of Kings. Then we have The Name of All Things. Oh my god, these books are huge. Then we have The Memory of Souls, The House of Always, and Discord of Gods. As I said, all by Jen Lyons. That is the Course of Dragons series. What way am I holding them? This series, I love it. I love it so much. I absolutely adore this series. This series, the world building, this, when I said like in a couple of previous books, like when I mentioned like Witchlands, that was like when I was starting to really get into like political fantasies and more complicated world building, like City of Brass, no, I really liked Ollie's side because we were getting more of the politics and the complicated world building. This takes it to a whole new level. I adore it. I love the world building in here. It is so complicated. Everything is so well thought out. There are so many different parts of the world, and every single one of them are unique and different and thought out, and there are some parts of the world which are like queer normative, some that are very more traditional fantasy that we're used to, and we get all of these different cultures. She is like so well thought out. I'll talk about like gender, and especially in the second book, and I really loved this series so much. I love the characters as well. I definitely think Kieran is a character that I really love, and I think he's very much a character that you're gonna like or not like, and I personally think he reminds me a lot of Fitz, and by that I mean like lovable, well-meaning, complete dumbass who is just constantly getting themselves in trouble. Yes, I like that kind of a character. They're the heroes of the story. There's like prophecies about them. They're supposed to like change the world. And both of them, they really try, but they're not very good at it, like 90% of the time. I started reading it, I think September of 2021? Yeah, September of 2021 was when I picked up the first one. I remember the first 100-ish or 200 pages of the books I find really slow and hard to get into, but once you hit that point, I cannot put them down. Like I read the last 400 pages in 2 days. And that's the case with all of them. I just flew through, especially the last 3. Well, Memory of Souls, everyone knows that I stopped reading it in February of 2022, and then I picked it up. I didn't pick it back up until December, and then I read it in 3 days. So this series, it follows Kieran, and he is a thief who is being raised in a brothel. And when we start the story, we see him after being imprisoned, and the person there with him tells him to tell his life story. And so he starts to tell his life story when he basically got sold into the slavery, and he starts, explaining the story of how it got him where he is now. And the person with him interrupts him and says, that's not where your story starts, it starts further back. And so she kind of starts telling his story from when he was this thief, and then he accidentally broke into the wrong house, got claimed by the royal family as their lost son. Everyone seems to want a piece of Kieran because there are all of these prophecies which Kieran might actually be a part of. And I so badly want to reread them because I feel like this is one of the series that everything is laid out. I am partial to that with Brandon Sanderson and like Brandon Sanderson, Robin Hobb, all of them, a lot of the times they like set everything up and they make it so that everything gets answered, at least eventually. Like it might take a while to get there, but they make it so that they make sure that they will remember every little thing, so everything gets answered. And I don't think every fantasy book has to. It took me a while to kind of realize that, because I remember reading some books and I was like, but what about this tiny little thing you mentioned? You never came back to it. Not everything needs to be mentioned, but in this book, there's definitely some small parts of like history and lore that don't get touched on, but the majority of things come back and are so important, and I loved it. I love this series so much. I love the characters, I love the relationships. Some of the side characters I don't care about as much. I really enjoyed the villain. Also, again, another series that we kind of have our main character, our main group of characters, and they are kind of nearly in the middle, and they kind of realize, wait, both sides are kind of sucky. And again, I really enjoy that kind of a setup. So this is my third favorite series, and I have a hard time believing it's going to move anytime. If anything, like, it might move up, but it's not moving down anytime soon, I don't think. On to number 2. I am putting the entire realm of the Elderlings, which is a bit cheating because I haven't finished the last 2 books yet. Don't judge me. I know it's been like a year since I read Fool's Assassin. I'm too afraid. I'm too scared to finish the series because I know I'm gonna cry my eyes out and I'm gonna like be thinking about it for days. I'm not gonna be able to read anything else for like at least a week. I did just bring over the first trilogy in the pretty illustrated editions, which are really heavy, by the way. There we go. They're so pretty. I do think that the first series is my favorite. I do like very traditional medieval type fantasy. As I mentioned earlier, Fitz, lovable dumbass. So long since I've actually had to talk about like what the series is about. So this series follows Fitz, and he is the illegitimate son of the king in waiting. And so when he gets brought to the keep by his maternal grandfather and is basically just given up because he doesn't want to have to care for him anymore, his father flees to the countryside and he is brought to Buckkeep, and he is raised by the stable master, and then eventually he gets put to work to train to be the royal assassin. And this series, it is such a slow series, but it is such a character driven series. Again, very much my kind of fantasy characters, really intriguing politics. I don't necessarily think the most fascinating magic system or world building, because that is very slow to be introduced to you. But I did enjoy it overall, but it's definitely like not my favorite. But I love the characters and the politics and the actual story itself so much. Yes, majority of the stories are just walking, but I don't mind stories about walking as long as I love the characters, and that is absolutely the case for the Farseer trilogy as well as the rest of the realm of the Elderlings. I do have a ranking on my phone, and I'm just waiting to finish the last 2 books with them and post an entire ranking, but I'm going to tell you right now what number 1 is, and everyone is going to be like, no, you're wrong, and it's Assassin's Quest. This is everyone's like least favorite book in the series, I feel like, because it is about 300 pages of walking and angst. I loved it. I love when my characters are miserable, so what can you do? And then series number 1, I think everyone can guess what's going to come up now. I think you can all guess. I gave you a hint at the beginning, and also another hint is I'm literally wearing a necklace for it. It's the Shades of Magic. This is a series that I think, like, if I read it right now for the first time, I don't think I would love it as much as I do. I don't think it would be like, I would read it and be like, all-time new favorite series. That was a weird way to say that. New all-time favorite series? There we go. I don't think I would say that. But I read it at the right time. It was, I think, the first adult fantasy I ever read. I loved the characters. I read them during my final secondary school exams. Well, I read the first one like a week before I started. It was the perfect escapism. I fell in love with the characters, and there's like a sibling relationship in here that really reminds me of me and my sister, which, you know, started my love of adult fantasy. And I don't think it's the most complicated world building or magic system or anything like that, but I love it. It is absolutely my favorite series of all time, and I think I have a hard time believing that it's going to get overtaken anytime soon. So yeah, I I really love this series. I'm going to be rereading them pretty soon because Fragile Threads of Power, which is a spin-off series, is going to be coming out in October. No, I think September. I think it got moved up a week. It was like the last week of September. And I am going to read that in about a day as soon as it comes out. I'm going to absolutely devour it. I'm so excited. It follows Kel. He is an Antari, which means he can travel through the 4 different Londons. And he is tasked with giving notes between the monarchs of these lands. And he also smuggles things on the side. One day he smuggles the wrong thing and it ends up getting him in a lot of trouble and he ends up kind of having to go on the run. But I do think this is one of the best introductions to adult fantasy because there is like some, you know, politics happening, but it's nothing too complicated. The magic system, again, not too complicated. Yes, there's a couple of like phrases that, you know, have been made up. You know, Astravars is to travel, all of this. It's a fairly easy one to understand because it's elemental, which again, I love. Growing up, I loved elemental magic systems, especially like in kids' books and all of that. I loved all of those kind of things. So a very easy to understand magic system, like an introduction to kind of a political royal setting, really lovable characters that they are adult, but they're actually, a lot of them are like early 20s, I think, like 19, 20, 21. So there's definitely like a lot of overlap between YA and adult, and I do think it's a brilliant introduction if you're interested. I feel like probably most people that are, you know, on my channel already read adult fantasy, but you know, I think that this is a really good starting point and I just love it a lot. Finally, we're going to be getting a new book in the series and I'm so afraid that she's going to kill someone off though. I will be very upset because, I mean, I know V.E. Schwab. She doesn't mind killing off characters. I don't want that to happen. I find it so hard to really talk about books that I love so much, and especially books like, especially when it's like a Dark Shade of Magic, when I'm like, I think if I read it now, I don't think it would be a favorite, but it was just absolutely right place, right time for me. So like, it's so much harder to like talk about and be like, this is why you should read it. I mean, I love it. That's why you should read it. Those are my top 10 favorite series of all time. So thank you guys so much for watching. I do hope you enjoyed. If you did, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.